This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and joining me today is from our EBC Thailand Bureau. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon. I'm Eliana Faith Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, giving you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
Thank you, Eliana, from our EBC Vietnam Bureau on today's headlines. The Philippines demanded China to promptly withdraw its fishing vessels near the features in Kalayaan Island Group as it asserted its claim on the Julian Felipe Reef, where about 200 Chinese ships have amassed on March 7.
Chinese Ambassador Huang Xilian on Wednesday insisted that the swarm of Chinese boats back in the Philippines' latest diplomatic protest was only taking shelter in the waters of Julian Felipe Reef, which is within the country's exclusive economic zone.
And 15 people have so far been confirmed dead and 400 are still missing in a huge blaze at the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, according to the United Nations. First in the country, the Philippines demanded China to promptly withdraw its fishing vessels near the features in Kalayaan Island Group as it asserted its claim on the Julian Felipe Reef, where about 200 Chinese ships have amassed on March 7. In a strongly worded statement, the Department of Foreign Affairs stressed that Julian Felipe Reef and the Kalayaan Island Group lies in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. It said, "We reiterate that we continued deployment, lingering presence, and activities of Chinese vessels in Philippine maritime zones blatantly infringe upon Philippine sovereignty rights, and jurisdiction." The DFA also said that Manila has been assiduously protesting the illegal and lingering or swarming presence of Chinese fishing vessels and maritime assets in the said areas. Despite this, China continued its infringements and tolerance that are contrary to its commitments under international law and the ASEAN-China Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. It called on Beijing to faithfully honor its obligations as a state party to the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, as well as respect the final and binding 2016 arbitral award in the South China Sea, which invalidated Beijing's 9-dash line claim in the strategic waters. The DFA demanded China to pull out its fishing vessels and maritime assets from the vicinity of all KIG or KIG features in the West Philippine Sea and to direct its fishing vessels to desist from environmentally destructive activities. In the past, these fishing vessels were used to harvest endangered species such as giant clams and sea turtles in the Philippine EEZ.
The Japanese embassy in Manila on Tuesday chimed in on the current situation in the South China Sea hours after the United States expressed its concerns over the swarming of some 200 Chinese vessels at the Julian Felipe Reef in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. In a statement, Japanese Ambassador Koshikawa Kazuhiko said issues related to the strategic waters are directly related to the region's stability. He said the South China Sea issues are directly related to peace and stability and a concern for all. Japan strongly opposes any action that heightens tensions, Kazuhiko said on Twitter. "We support the enforcement of rule of law in the sea and work with the international community to protect the free, open, and peaceful seas. The armed forces of the Philippines confirmed on Monday that about 183 vessels believed to be Chinese maritime militia were sighted by a Philippine Maritime Air Patrol in Julian Felipe Reef, also known as Whitsun Reef, about 175 nautical miles off Palawan. The U.S., the country's defense ally, said it stands with the Philippines as it has expressed concern over this unauthorized and lingering presence of Chinese fishing vessels on Philippine waters. In response, the Chinese embassy in Manila took to Twitter and even tagged the official handle of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines to tell Washington to stay out of the South China Sea issue. The U.S. is not a party to the South China Sea issue. Fanning flames and provoking confrontation in the region will only serve selfish interests of individual country and undermine the regional peace and stability, it said. It added that both China and the Philippines are sovereign and independent countries and have the will, wisdom, and ability to properly handle relevant issues through bilateral channels. The Philippine government, through the Department of Foreign Affairs, told China to immediately withdraw its fishing vessels on the country's waters in the West Philippine Sea.
And here's Chinese Ambassador Wang Shilian's comment on the DFA's demand for China to pull out its fishing vessels in the Spratlys, particularly the Julian Felipe Reef. Let's take a listen.
As we issue a statement the day before yesterday, Chinese fishing vessels have been fishing in the area for many, many years. Now those vessels are taking shelter in the part of the, sea. I think it's a quite normal activity. There is no such militia vessel as claimed by some people. Any speculation is not helpful. Thank you.
Over 200 unauthorized Chinese vessels were sighted in the Julian Felipe Reef as early as March 7 and have been lingering as of March 23 in the same area. The Department of Foreign Affairs lodged a diplomatic note protesting the swarming and has called on Beijing to immediately withdraw its vessels near the reef and all relevant Kalayaan Island Group features. Several foreign governments, including the U.S., Japan, and the United Kingdom, voiced concern over this latest South China Sea situation and opposed actions that may heighten tensions. In a statement, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington stands with Manila as its defense ally regarding concerns about the gathering of PRC or People's Republic of China maritime militia vessels near Whitsun Reef. We call on Beijing, he said, to stop using its maritime militia to intimidate and provoke others, which undermines peace and security, he said on Tuesday night. The U.S. Embassy in Manila earlier claimed that Chinese boats have been mooring in the area for many months in ever-increasing numbers, regardless of the weather.
15 people have so far been confirmed dead and 400 are still missing in a huge blaze at the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, the United Nations said Tuesday. The cause of the fire is still unknown.
We have 15 people confirmed death. We have so far confirmed 15 people dead, 560 injured, 400 are still missing, and at least 10,000 shelters have been destroyed. That means at least 45,000 people are being displaced and for whom we seek now provisional shelter. As of today, the search and rescue is ongoing. This might go up. We have at least today 560 injured people who have been found and who's being under treatment, but we still have 400 people who are unaccounted for, who are still missing. We're still somewhere maybe in the rubble or so these figures are most certainly not the final ones. They are the figures of today. What we have seen in this fire is something we've never seen before in these camps. It is massive. It is devastating.
It broke out Monday at the world's biggest refugee camp, where nearly 1 million people from the persecuted Rohingya Muslim minority are sheltering, having fled a brutal military-led offensive in neighboring Myanmar. The UN's International Organization for Migration said it has pledged $1 million to relief efforts, but a further $20 million would be required to react to the most urgent needs. IOM spokeswoman Angela Wells said the fire had caused catastrophic damage, and the health clinic run by the IOM, the camp's largest, was completely destroyed. Wells said the first responders were Rohingya volunteers who helped people to safety, supporting the fire response efforts and helping the relief efforts. IOM teams worked through the night to help those who fled the scene.
The massive fire that has ravaged the world's largest refugee settlement, home to nearly 900,000 Rohingya refugees, has now taken at least 15 lives. The UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, in support of the ongoing response led by the Bangladeshi authorities and in cooperation with UN organizations and NGO partners, as well as refugee volunteers, is pushing to provide critical support and protection to some 45,000 Rohingya refugees who lost their shelters and belongings in yesterday's devastating blaze. Let's listen in.
We are deeply concerned about the fire incident that took place in some camps near Cox's Bazar.
Families were separated. Some children are still looking for their parents. This is a very, very difficult situation, and our heart goes out to the thousands of refugees who have yet met another disaster.
Based on provisional reports, as of early Tuesday, 15 refugees have been confirmed as having tragically lost their lives in the fire. More than 560 have been injured, and an estimated 400 people are still missing. At least 10,000 shelters are estimated to have been destroyed or damaged. Refugees who have been displaced are being temporarily accommodated within the community. Current figures are expected to climb in the coming days as new assessments come in. With an unknown number of refugees having sustained burned injuries, UNHCR has provided medical supplies through ICRC in support of the management of burned patients. Emergency first aid, including psychosocial support, is also being provided. Health volunteers from the refugee community are helping to refer affected refugees to critical support services. UNHCR is preparing to reissue registration documents to those who lost theirs in the fire. So far, UNHCR has provided some 3,000 blankets, 14,500 solar lamps, 10,400 kitchen sets, and 11,500 mosquito nets. It has also made available emergency water and sanitation assistance together with Oxfam, including construction of 20 emergency latrines, emergency tap stands, water tanks, jerry cans, and water purification tablets. 4 water tankers are delivering safe water to areas where those displaced by the fire are congregating. Camps at Cox's Bazar currently shelter over 870,000 Rohingya refugees. The vast majority, some 720,000, arrived in 2017 fleeing violence in Myanmar's Rakhine State. UNHCR's 2021 appeal for Rohingya response, totaling $294.5 million is currently only 16% funded. The effects of Monday's lethal and destructive blaze will only exacerbate critical needs and further strain already overstretched resources. UNHCR appealed for urgent mobilization of government and private sector donors. The agency said their timely contributions are critical for the ongoing humanitarian response and the UNHCR's capacity to protect and assist both the Rohingya refugees and their Bangladeshi hosts.
The shooting death of a 7-year-old girl in her own home triggered fresh outrage at Myanmar's military crackdown on Wednesday, with at least 20 children reported killed since the junta took charge last month. There was chaos overnight in Mandalay, with barricades burning, arrests, Homes raided by security forces, beatings, and machine guns ringing out over multiple neighborhoods, local media reported. 3 people were killed on Tuesday, including Kim Myo-chit, 7, shot dead at her home in Mandalay, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, or the AAPP, a local monitoring group. AFP has yet to independently verify the girl's death. Aid groups Save the Children and AAPPs both say that at least 20 people aged under 18 have been killed in the crackdown. We are horrified that children continue to be among the targets of these fatal attacks on peaceful protesters, Save the Children said in a statement. The charity said it was also extremely worried about hundreds of young people being held in detention. Myanmar's junta on Tuesday defended its 7-week crackdown, insisting it would not tolerate anarchy. AAPP has verified 275 deaths since the coup, but warns the toll could be higher, and says more than 2,800 people have been detained. Junta spokesman Zhao Mintun put the death toll lower at 164 and branded the victims violent terrorist people at a Tuesday news conference in the capital, Naypyidaw.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
This 2021 ang babago sa inyong kapagkainan dahil may kantahan,
kainan, at katatawanan!
Roll into one!
Ito ang
Eat Sing Time!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
Alas 8 ng gabi.
only here at Net 25!
It's singing time.
Welcome back. Malacanang on Monday announced that all private companies, including cigarette firms, are allowed to purchase COVID-19 vaccines, provided they enter into tripartite agreements with the national government and the manufacturers. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this clarification after lawmakers questioned a supposed draft administration order, or AO, prohibiting private companies from importing COVID vaccines for their employees, even describing the document as illegal. Let's listen in.
Lilinawin ko lang po, no? Meron na pong batas na nagsasabi gobyerno ang magbabayad sa mga side effects ng mga bakuna. At ito po ang dahilan kung bakit, bagamat pinapayagan natin ngayon ang mga pribadong sektor na bumili ng bakuna, kinakailangan dumaan pa rin po sa tripartite agreement. Bakit po? Wala pa pong commercial sale ng mga bakuna. Lahat po yan, wala pang Certificate of Product Registration. Meron lang pong emergency use authorization. At dahil dito, talagang hindi po pwedeng pumunta sa kahit anong manufacturer and private sector para bumili ng bakuna na hindi po involve ang gobyerno. Kaya po involve ang gobyerno, meron nga tayong batas itong COVID-19 vaccination program na nagsasabi na gobyerno na ang magbabayad sa mga side effects sa mga bakuna na covered lamang ng EUA. Now, kahapon, 2 beses o 2 konteksto na gamit ang indemnity. Unang-una, si Secretary Dominguez ginamit yung salitang indemnity kasi lahat din ng mga vaccine manufacturers, kung ang bibili ay pribadong sektor, humihingi ng indemnity doon sa bayad din. At indemnity doon sa pananagutan in case of side effects. Kaya nga po, kinakailangan pumirma pa rin ang gobyerno. At kahapon din, yung sinabi naman po ni Presidente na hindi naman po pwede na walang pananagutan ng pribadong sektor, ito po ay dahil nakasaad nga po sa batas natin na bagamat gobyerno magbabayad ng mga side effects, may 2 exceptions po dito. Kung nagkaroon po ng tinatawag na willful neglect o yung tinatawag na gross negligence. Ito po yung kapabayaan na wika nga ni Miss International, major na kapabayaan, no? Gross negligence. Sana po nalagay na natin sa tamang konteksto ang sinabi ni Presidente dahil meron po mga parang hindi po tamang interpretasyon na napublish na sa ilang mga periodiko.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. proposed the engagement of the private sector to implement simultaneous vaccination of priority groups to balance the safety of our healthcare workers while revitalizing our nation's economy.
So ito po yung way forward po natin, Mr. President, na nakita po natin para po talaga mapabilis ang ating to comply with your guidelines na magkaroon po na tayo ng general public na vaccination. Sa experience po ng US, hindi po nila tinapos yung healthcare workers. Nung nakaka-11% pa lang po sila, bumanat na po sila sa essential workers, kaya 75 plus million na anak lang na vaccinated. Ganon din po yung ages 16 and 64 with medical conditions. Ganon din po ang Israel na habang kahalatian po ng healthcare workers, na ganon na rin po sila sa ages 55, 40, 35, and then they are now on the 16. Ganon din po ang ginawa ng Indonesia. Kung makikita niyo po ito ang Indonesia, na medyo nag-deviate siya ng konti. Pero maganda rin po ang ginawa niya kasi tumataas po ang kanyang vaccination per day. So ibig sabihin, sa kahalatian po ng healthcare workers, while they're waiting for the second shot, ang ginawa po, nanuna rin po nila yung elderly. And then yung public services workers at saka yung essential workers. Ito po, maganda po ito. Palagay ko, maano po ito ni Secretary of Finance dahil kasi ito po talaga, we are balancing the safety of our healthcare workers at the same time, we are trying to provide to sustain yung economy. Kasi po, ang nakita po natin, dapat talaga yung private sector at saka po yung government and national government ay dapat po sabay-sabay po tayong mag-inoculate. Ito po yung scenario na binil po namin with the help of the private sector, particularly yung Ayala Group and also the Boston Consulting Group. Na dapat po pagkatian po natin ng mga sector. Kung makikita po natin, ito po yung tinatawag nating vaccine deployment scenario. So kung makikita po natin, yung national government at saka LGU supply and also the private sector supply, more or less 18 million. Kung pagsasabay-sabayin po natin ito, yung scenario po nito, katulad ng ginawa po ng India, ginawa ng Indonesia, ginawa ng US, at saka ginawa po ng Israel, na sabay-sabay po, na simultaneous, para po yung tinatawag sa engineering na PERP-CPM. Ito po, magkakaroon po tayo ng massive inoculation at magiging malaki ang output natin at a given time. Yun po ang aming iyan po sa NITAG na kung pwede pong magkaroon po na tinatawag natin na sequential. Kasi yung sequential po, medyo matagal po. Dapat po talaga simultaneous. Simultaneous po natin ginagawa. We are targeting A1 to A3 and A4 at the same time. So the government, national government, and the LGU may target at the same time yung A1 to A3, while the private sector can do also their inoculation with the supervision of DOH and the LGU, targeting the A4. Ibig sabihin yung mga frontliners and economic frontliners. So, yun lang po ang aking presentation, mahal na Presidente. Ito po yung senaryo natin para mapabilis po natin ang ating pababaksinate. From an average of 30,000, we can rise up into 150,000 to 300 and even 1 million per week.
Vietnam has approved Russia's Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine, its health ministry said Tuesday, 2 weeks after the Southeast Asian country kicked off its inoculation campaign. The shot is the second to be given the green light after the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Ministry of Health has approved Russia's Sputnik V vaccine for the urgent need in fighting and preventing the pandemic, it said on its website. 1,000 doses of Sputnik V given to Hanoi as a gift are already in the country, but it is unclear if or when more doses would arrive. The Russian vaccine is now approved for use in 56 countries with a combined population of over 1.5 billion people, according to the Russian Direct Investment Fund, or the RDIF, one of the vaccine's developers. Vietnam, with a population of 98 million, has so far vaccinated 36,000 people with the AstraZeneca vaccine, most of whom are healthcare workers. It has placed an order for a further 30 million doses of AstraZeneca, while another 30 million are coming through the COVAX Global Vaccine Sharing Scheme organized by the World Health Organization. The Ministry of Health said it wants to acquire 150 million doses by the end of the year.
Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police today reported that the number of police officers who recovered from the coronavirus disease has reached 11,913. Citing their latest data, the PNP officer in charge, Lieutenant General Guillermo Eleazar, said that 91 new recoveries were reported as of Tuesday night. He also reported 1,504 active cases, with 149 new cases, raising the police force's total case tally to 13,453. Of the active cases, 363 are officers from the PNP headquarters in Camp Crame. 571 are from PNP offices outside Camp Crame but within Metro Manila, and 570 are from the regional police offices. Meanwhile, the death toll from the disease stands at 36. Now, Eleazar reiterated the instruction of PNP Chief General de Bolsinas, who also tested positive for COVID-19 on March 11, to PNP personnel to strictly observe the minimum health safety protocols, most especially pregnant police officers who are working from home because they are more vulnerable to infections and other highly pathogenic respiratory infections. The PNP has identified the whole Kiangan building that houses the Provident Funds and the Public Safety Savings and Loan Association as an additional quarantine facility. The police force has earlier adopted a modified work scheme for its civilian personnel as part of efforts to curb the surge in cases. Meanwhile, some 2,544 police medical frontliners have been inoculated as of Monday. Eleazar said the figure is out of 2,721 police medical frontliners who have registered for vaccination. He also said 175 personnel have experienced minor adverse reactions to the vaccine, while 177 PNP members were not allowed for medical reasons. However, Eleazar noted that these reactions often quickly disappeared and posed no harm to the inoculated police personnel. He said 1,925 police personnel in Metro Manila and other regional offices have been vaccinated with the Chinese-donated Sinovac Biotech's CoronaVac vaccines, while 619 were injected with the AstraZeneca jabs that were obtained through the COVAX facility, of which an initial 700 doses were given to the PNP. And we have an update coming in from Bangkok, Thailand. Here's Faye Barte joining us live. Hello, Faye.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon. We're going to give some positivity that is ongoing here in the Kingdom of Thailand. We can remember, Alma, before that the government gave and helped the people here, the locals here, to have a because there is a pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, so they decided to make a program which is half-half or the 50-50 for the locals here, and which means that if you are registered in that program, you're just going to buy or you're just going to pay 50% of the total amount of the item that you are going to purchase. Now, this time, Alma, the government has also implemented a project to help people again, especially for the local and especially for the Thai people, that they are going to have or going to help people with having financial problems to offer low rental fees. And the National Housing Authority declared this, and they are going to assist the people to pay only 1,500 to 3,000 baht per month. Alma, 1,500 to 3,500 baht, it is actually equivalent to 2,000 pesos to 5,000 pesos also, and in US dollars, maybe around 30 to 96 US dollars. So this project has divided into 4 categories. The first one is the Plan X, the Plan A, the Plan B, and the Plan C. Plan X is actually referring to the people which are elderly and they are handicapped, and they are going to pay for 1,500 only. And the square meters that they are renting is about 30 square meters only. The next program or category, is the Plan A. This Plan A is 30 square meters also, but single people or single parents, they are going to pay 2,000 baht per month. And Plan B, this is actually bigger, and this is actually 40 square meters with a separate bedroom, and they are going to pay 2,500 baht per month. The Plan C, the last category, this is actually for family, and this bedroom or this place is actually 50 square meters and with 2 bedrooms, and they are going to pay for 3,000 baht per month. Now, this program, Alma, this is actually has a criteria to be followed. The first criteria is to be a Thai national. So foreigners are not in this program, and they are financially stricken by the COVID-19, and single parent, disabled person or handicapped, elderly, unemployed also, or homeless. And also one of the criteria that they need to follow is a landless farmer. And for the application of this, Alma, it is actually ongoing. They started this yesterday, starting 8:30 in the morning up to 12 p.m. And the application will be until March 30. Back to you, Alma.
Okay, just to remind our viewers about the 50-50 co-payment scheme that you reported earlier during our pandemic reports there in Thailand. It is a scheme where the government will pay, or those registered individuals, they will be subsidized for half of their purchases at small shops, with the government subsidizing the other half. So for example, the government will pay half of food, drink, and general foods purchases up to 150 baht, then capped at 3,000 baht per person for the duration of the scheme. I just want to ask, were there any concerns about or cases about some people taking advantage of this scheme by increasing the prices of their products or reporting transactions when there were no real purchases, something like that?
Yes, Alma, we haven't got any reports yet that there are some people who are taking advantage of this program. However, Alma, there are some people, especially Thai nationals, they want the government to continue this program because the COVID-19 or the effect of the pandemic here in the kingdom is still ongoing.
All right, thank you very much for your update, Faye. Looking forward to more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also, Alma. This is Faye Barte reporting live here in Bangkok, Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
American optimism is one of the possible factors causing the surge of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the country, World Health Organization or the WHO country representative Dr. Rabindra Abeysingh said on Monday. Abeysingh made this comment in the televised public briefing in response to the remark of former advisor to the National Task Force Against COVID-19, Dr. Tony Leashan, who claimed the slow response of the national government is the cause of the rise in cases.
But in other countries also where we are seeing an increase, it's not vaccine confidence, it's vaccine optimism probably that is responsible to some extent to an increase of COVID cases, not only here in the Philippines, but in other countries also where we are seeing an increase. The interpretation is that with the arrival of vaccines, people started relaxing their protocol compliance, so the public health behaviors. There was a tendency, not largely, but in small measure, to go out more frequently, to meet more frequently with other people. Of course, this was partly because of the long quarantine periods and the long lockdowns that people have undergone. And so with the arrival of vaccines in many countries, there was an optimism that people can go back quickly to the way they lived life before the pandemic. And these little changes in compliance with the protocols is believed to have caused opportunity for the virus to transmit more freely, and that could have been one of the causes why we are seeing increased transmission here in the Philippines also. So we are seeing right now a global increase in cases. Our Director General mentioned that this on Friday, that last week was the 4th consecutive week. We are seeing a week-on-week increase of the number of cases reported globally. So after a stabilization of transmission in January and early February, we have seen now that globally in several countries we are seeing an increase of transmission. And the thinking is that this could be related to vaccine optimism and the arrival of vaccines and not following the protocols and the physical distancing as before the vaccines arrived. But it could also be to some extent linked to circulation of new variants that are thought to have increased transmissibility. So the mix of these factors could actually be causing higher levels of transmission in the Philippines also.
In the same televised briefing, Abeysingh said the United Kingdom's AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine is effective and safe to use amid reports of 40 people who suffered from thromboembolism after getting the vaccine in Europe. Abeysingh said the 40 cases are a small number compared to 20 million vaccinees in Europe and 30 million vaccinees in other countries who did not experience thromboembolism after receiving AstraZeneca COVID-19 shots. Earlier, the Food and Drug Administration said AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine has 70% efficacy rate after the administration of the second dose.
An estimated 1.4 million fewer people received care for tuberculosis in 2020 than usual because of COVID-19, according to the UN Health Agency. The latest data from the World Health Organization from more than 80 countries showed a reduction in treatment of 21% in the first year of the pandemic compared with 2019. The biggest differences were in Indonesia, down 42%, South Africa 41%, the Philippines 37%, and India 25%.
Despite being preventable and curable, tuberculosis is one of the deadliest infections in the world, killing 1.5 million people each year. 10 million people fall ill with tuberculosis each year as well, and many of them are children, almost 900,000. And most live in low and low-middle-income countries and some of the poorest countries in the world. It's also the leading killer of people with HIV. About a quarter of the world's population, roughly 1.7 billion people, are infected with TB, the latent form. However, if this is not treated with preventive measures and therapies, it can become active and people will become sick and die as well. To make matters worse, COVID-19 has exacerbated the problem and set many national programs back in their efforts to respond to the TB pandemic in their countries.
Awalnya saya tidak tahu apa itu TPT. Saya dihubungi oleh petugas kesehatan di Puskesmas Kecamatan Senen untuk menjalani terapi pencegahan TBC. Karena di rumah saya ada yang sakit TBC paru, yaitu ibu mertua saya. Kemudian saya dijelaskan bahwa saya, istri, dan anak saya merupakan kontak erat pasien TBC dan berpotensi terinfeksi kuman TBC. Di situ saya dijelaskan mengenai pentingnya TPT untuk mencegah kuman TBC berkembang menjadi TBC aktif.
If we're going to have any chance of ending TB in the next 10 to 12 years, we have to prevent it in the first place. Unitaid has been at the forefront working with many partners, with governments, manufacturers, civil society actors, and the World Health Organization to bring a new treatment for preventing TB, which is called 3HP. We are combining two treatments into one, which reduces how many pills somebody has to take a day from 9 to 3. It's easier to do this, it reduces the logistics and the packaging, and we've also lowered the cost by over 70% for this treatment, which is really important.
On World Tuberculosis Day, that is celebrated every March 24, the UN agency pointed out that some countries have already taken steps to sidestep the impact of new coronavirus on the delivery of TB services. Successful policies have included expanding the use of digital technologies such as computer-aided diagnosis in chest x-rays, which is particularly beneficial in countries lacking sufficient numbers of trained radiographers.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday expressed his profound concern over the rise in violence against Asians and people of Asian descent during the COVID-19 pandemic. The world has witnessed horrific, deadly attacks, verbal and physical harassment, bullying in school, workplace, discrimination, incitement to hatred in the media and on social media platforms, and incendiary language by those in positions of power, said Farhan Haq, deputy spokesman for Guterres, in a statement. In some countries, Asian women have been specifically targeted for attack, adding misogyny to the toxic mix of hatred. Thousands of incidents across the past year have perpetrated a centuries-long history of intolerance, stereotyping, scapegoating, exploitation, and abuse, the statement said. Gutierrez expressed his full support for the victims and families and stood in solidarity with all those facing racism and other assaults on their human rights. This moment of challenge for all must be a time to uphold dignity for all, the UN chief said. 8 people, 6 of whom were Asians, were killed in 3 shooting incidents in massage parlors in the Atlanta area by a suspect on March 16. The attacks came amid a troubling spike in violence against the Asian American community during the coronavirus pandemic.
Talking to him, and he had his face smashed into the ground. And I want to make sure that we have our own fucking pie. We need to make sure that we're represented.
ASEAN in Focus will be back after a short break.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. Asian markets extended losses Wednesday as renewed virus and vaccine fears return to haunt investors as Europe faces a fresh spike in infections and lockdowns that could knock the economic recovery off course. After several weeks of worrying that an expected resurgence in global growth will fan inflation and force central banks to hike interest rates, the fear of another COVID wave has returned with gusto. Europe's 2 biggest economies, Germany and France, as well as a number of other countries, have been forced to reimpose new restrictions to battle the disease at the same time as they struggled to get their vaccination programs rolling properly. Hong Kong was among the biggest losers, dropping 1.7% after news that the government had suspended its Pfizer or BioNTech vaccine program over concerns about packaging, dealing a blow to the city's already slow inoculation program. Nearby Macau also halted jabs. Tokyo shed 1.8%, while Shanghai, Seoul, Singapore, Taipei, Manila, Jakarta, and Bangkok and Wellington were also well in the red. Sydney was slightly higher.
Cheaper than a coffee, but powerful enough to keep him riding Bangkok streets without sleep. Sunthorn puts a flame to a methamphetamine tablet wrapped in foil and inhales the intoxicating vapors. Thailand has long been a global gateway for exports of the drug, but the coronavirus pandemic's sudden disruption of international transport has seen a surge in cut-price Yaba tablets in the local market. Now, we warn you on some images that you might see that you might find distressing. Take a look.
คือเราจะไม่หลับไงคือแบบมันกระปี้กระเป๋ามันพูดง่ายๆภาษาเด็กเขาเรียกว่าดีดก็คือสปีดคือจะสปีดตัวอะไรขึ้นมาเนี่ยทำให้เราหาเงินได้มันก็มีผลกระทบอะครับเพราะหาเงินไม่ได้เราจะเอาเงินที่ไหนไปเล่นน่ะก็อย่างที่บอกก็ต้องหาลักหาขโมยหาแกะของในบ้านไปขายหาของอะไรไปขายที่ขายได้ถ้าคนเราต้องการมากๆนะมันก็จะเป็นงั้น
Authorities arrested a notorious drug courier and seized some 13.6 million pesos worth of shabu in a buy-bust operation in Laguna. Citing reports from the Philippine National Police Drug Enforcement Group, or the PNP-DEG, PNP officer in charge Lieutenant General Guillermo Eleazar identified the suspect as Edzarfil Sakilan, who was arrested inside the St. Joseph Village, San Pedro, Laguna on Tuesday night. Sakilan yielded around 2 kilograms of shabu, buy-bust money, one Honda City bearing plate number AEA 9728, and one cellular phone. Initial investigations showed that the suspect operates in Metro Manila, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, and in some parts of Mindanao. Sakilan is an alleged accomplice of Michael Romualdez, a supplier of illegal drugs, who was earlier arrested in Imus City, Cavite. Their supply comes from a certain Chinese national who contacted them using an international number based in Hong Kong. Sakilan and Romualdez are allegedly members of an illegal drug syndicate composed of Filipino, Muslim, and Chinese nationals. According to Eleazar, their illegal drug transaction was discovered when one of the personnel of PDEG entered the drug syndicate through the confidential informant. During the monitoring and surveillance of the operating teams, it was disclosed that they have been using different vehicles whenever they have an illegal drug transaction. The suspect will be charged with violation of Republic Act 9165 or the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002.
In Cambodia, land degradation, illegal logging, and overharvesting are threatening forest resources. Forest cover has decreased from 60% to 2006 to 44% in 2018. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations is working with local authorities, INGOs, NGOs, and communities to restore forests and landscapes in the country. In Cambodia, 65% of rural population depends on agriculture, natural resources, and forests as a primary source of food and income.
Pechul presa kum anyamo beh penle chich tempiang beh lak prech da chang huai yo to sala hop rumuai ka do chia rư thma kap o yo to pra praក្នុងគ្រួសារចាសហគមន៍នេះផ្ដល់ផលប្រយោជន៍ដូចជារកប្រាក់ចំណូលបន្ថែមក្នុងគ្រួសារហើយការពារភាពរាំងស្ងួតបេះផ្លែបេះផ្លែឈើហូប
In 2016, the Forestry Administration partnership with FAO started implementing the Forest Landscape Restoration Mechanism Program, which is integrated landscape approach. The program aims to scale up the forest and landscape restoration actions and contribute to the improvement of the sustainable ecosystem goods, service, as well as sustainable livelihood for dependent communities.
The FRM support has demonstrated that the community forestry members can take care of their own restoration and sustainability actions as long as they're provided with the appropriate tools and resources.
Like many other villagers, Tun Kin earns a livelihood mainly from subsistence, rice farming, cash crops such as cashew nut, and non-timber forest products such as wild vegetables. Since 2016, FAO, in partnership with the Forestry Administration, has been implementing innovative forest and landscape restoration actions with an integrated landscape approach. The project supports capacity building for communities in tree planting, introducing the concept of equitable sharing of benefits, which motivates community members to participate and maintain tree planting. Each year, the world loses more than 10 million hectares of forest, and degradation affects almost 2 billion hectares of land, an area larger than South America. Forest destruction and land degradation is affecting the well-being of at least 3.2 billion people and costing more than 10% of annual global GDP in lost ecosystem services. The UN General Assembly has proclaimed on March 21, the International Day of Forest, to celebrate and raise awareness of the importance of all types of forests. FAO and the UN Forum on Forests are the lead agencies organizing the day. And that's all the time we have for you today. Eliana, thank you very much for joining me and keeping me company today.
Thank you so much, Alma. And that's the latest news in the Asean region. I'm Eliana Faith Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
And we'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.